Okay, so you guys have sent in some really interesting stuff lately. A lot of it focusing on strength training and just general fitness.
Yeah, seems like everyone's trying to get strong these days.
Yeah, for sure. And one program that's come up a bunch is StrongLifts 5x5.
Right, yeah, I've seen that one floating around.
And we actually got a great resource from one of our listeners, an ebook by Mehdi, the guy who actually created StrongLifts 5x5.
Oh, cool. So we've got kind of like the source material right here.
Exactly. So we figured for today's deep dive, let's really unpack this StrongLifts 5x5 program, figure out what it is, why it's presented as so effective, and, especially for beginners, why this is a great starting point to build muscle, lose fat, and just get a lot stronger.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm curious to dig into this one.
Yeah, me too. So I guess like a good starting point would be to talk a little bit about the author, like where this is coming from.
Yeah, I always like to know a bit about the back.
So the program comes from Mehdi. He's the founder of StrongLifts.com. And he actually developed this whole system based on his own, like, decade plus of strength training experience.
Oh, wow. So he's definitely got some skin in the game.
Yeah, and he took inspiration from this older program called Bill Starr's 5x5.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of that one too. It's like a classic, right?
Yeah, totally. So he's building on something that's been around for a while. But I think the important thing, especially for you guys listening, is that Mehdi really designed this for people who are new to lifting.
Right. So like if you're just getting started with barbells, maybe you haven't had a coach or a lot of structured training.
Yeah, exactly. This is like that step-by-step plan for you.
Yeah.
So one thing that really stood out to me is like right off the bat in the ebook is how he lays out these fundamental principles.
Oh, yeah. Like the theory behind it all.
Yeah, and it's more than just, which exercises to do. He really emphasizes that strength training is like a really fast way to build muscle.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. The more muscle you have, the more calories you burn, right?
Sure. Exactly. And that even happens when you're resting, so it can really help with lowering body fat.
Makes sense.
But he goes even further, and he talks about how it's not just about like that time in the gym, it's about building a whole healthy lifestyle around it.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Like consistency is key.
Totally. So he suggests working out 3 times a week and really making those workouts non-negotiable, like prioritize them, schedule them in.
Yeah, I can see how that would be important, like just making it a habit, part of your routine.
And that goes hand in hand with nutrition. Like the ebook is really clear about how important that is too.
Okay, so what are the main recommendations there?
First off, protein. You got to get enough protein to support muscle growth and repair. He suggests aiming for about 1 gram per pound of body weight.
Okay, that's pretty standard advice for building muscle.
Yeah, and then whole grain carbohydrates for energy vegetables and fruits for vitamins and fiber and even healthy fats.
That's even saturated fat, right?
Yeah, he actually emphasizes that saturated fat is important for hormone production like testosterone.
Interesting. I mean, it makes sense. Hormones play a big role in muscle growth and overall health.
Totally. And then, of course, water, staying hydrated is super important too.
Right. Can't forget the basics.
And I thought this was kind of cool. He even built in some flexibility with this 90-10 or 80-20 rule.
Oh, yeah. What's that all about?
It basically means like 90% of the time you're eating really well, and then 10% of the time you have some wiggle room.
Okay, so you don't have to be perfect all the time.
Exactly. It's like a more sustainable approach.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And I thought this was really helpful. He actually gives some like general nutrition advice tailored to different body types.
Oh, really? Like ectomorph, endomorph, that kind of thing?
Yeah, like if you're naturally skinny or carrying some fat on top of being skinny or overweight, he gives you like a starting point for thinking about how much you should be eating based on the program.
Okay, that's actually really useful because everyone's starting point is a little bit different, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, we've got like the lifestyle, the nutrition, that's like the foundation now. Let's actually get into the core of the StrongLifts 5x5 beginner program.
Yeah, let's break it down.
So it's 3 workouts per week, and each session is designed to be about 30 minutes.
Really, only 30 minutes?
Yeah, which might seem short, but the ebook actually makes some pretty big claims about what you can achieve in as little as 4 weeks.
Like what kind of results are we talking about?
Increased strength, noticeable muscle growth, fat loss, even improvements in things like testosterone levels, cardiovascular health, flexibility, joint strength.
Wow, so like a pretty big overall impact in just a month.
Exactly. And he gives some examples too. People gaining some muscle weight, others losing fat, and seeing big jumps in their squat strength.
Okay, that's encouraging to hear, like real people getting real results.
Yeah. And speaking of the squat, this is where it gets interesting. The squat is like the absolute core of this program.
Yeah, I was noticing that in the outline. It's in every single workout.
3 times a week, you're hitting those squats. And the idea is that it works so many muscles throughout your body that it kind of creates this overall training effect that drives those results.
Yeah, the squat is like the king of exercises, right?
Exactly. It's a real workhorse, and it's cool to see how this program is kind of rooted in these older methods too. Mehdi mentions that it's a modern take on Bill Starr's 5x5 from way back in 1976.
Oh, wow. So it's like a classic approach with a modern twist.
Yeah, and he points out that other well-known programs like Starting Strength and Mad Cow, they also use this fundamental concept of sets of 5 with frequent squatting.
Interesting. So it's like this tried and true approach that's stood the test of time.
Totally. All right, so let's talk equipment, because if you're thinking about starting this program, you'll need some specific stuff.
Yeah. What do we need?
So this is not a machine-based routine. You're going to need a power rack or at least a squat rack or some really sturdy stands, an Olympic barbell, a weightlifting bench, and this is important, weight plates in small increments like 1.25 kilograms or 2.5 pounds.
Okay, so like the little plates, not just the big 45-pounders.
Exactly. Those smaller plates are crucial for making those gradual increases in weight, especially for the upper body exercises.
Yeah, that makes sense. You don't want to be jumping up in weight too quickly.
And he makes it very clear that machines like the Smith machine are not suitable.
Why is that?
Because you need to be actively stabilizing the weight yourself, engaging more muscles, not just relying on the machine to guide the movement.
Right, that makes sense. You want to be working those stabilizing muscles too.
Okay, so now let's talk about the exercises themselves. The program centers around 8 core exercises, but you won't be doing all of them in every workout.
So how does it work?
You'll be alternating between 2 workouts, workout A and workout B, and you'll do 4 exercises in each session.
Okay, so like a split routine.
Exactly. So for workout A, you've got the squat for 5 sets of 5 repetitions, the bench press for 5 sets of 5, the barbell row for 5 sets of 5, and then dips for 3 sets to failure.
3 sets to failure, meaning like as many reps as you can until you can't do anymore.
Exactly. And then for workout B, you start with a squat. Again, 5 sets of 5, followed by the overhead press, also 5 sets of 5, then the deadlift. And this is done for just 1 heavy set of 5 reps.
Just 1 set for deadlifts.
Yeah, and then you finish with pull-ups or chin-ups for 3 sets to failure.
Okay. And do you alternate between pull-ups and chin-ups each workout?
Exactly. So one workout B, you might do pull-ups, the next you'll do chin-ups.
Okay, that makes sense.
And he talks about rest times between sets too, starting with about a minute of rest and increasing that to 2 or even 3 minutes as the weights get heavier and you're finding it harder to complete all your reps.
Yeah, that makes sense. Got to give your body time to recover.
And the tempo of the lifts is important too. You want to lift the weight with force on the way up, but control it as you lower it back down.
This is like a controlled eccentric.
Exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
So now how do you know what weight to start with?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially if you're a beginner.
Right. So the guide gives specific recommendations for finding that starting point for the squat, bench press, and overhead press. You actually start with just the empty barbell.
Wow, really? So just getting the form down first?
Yeah, exactly. For barbell rows, he suggests starting with around 30 kilograms or 66 pounds, and the deadlift starts a bit heavier, around 40 kilograms or 88 pounds.
Okay. And what about the pull-ups, chin-ups, and dips?
You just start with your own body weight for those.
Okay, makes sense.
And if you're not a complete beginner, the guide has a slightly different approach. It suggests doing 1 heavy set of 5 for each exercise to kind of gauge your strengths. And then when you actually start the program, you back off about 30% from that weight.
Okay, so like finding a challenging but manageable weight to start with.
Exactly. And then here's where it gets really important. You're going to be adding weight to the bar every single workout. That's the principle of progressive overload.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that, like constantly challenging yourself to lift a little bit more each time.
Totally. So the guide actually gives specific recommendations for how much weight to add for each exercise for the squat. It's typically 2.5 to 5 kilograms or 5 to 10 pounds each time you train it.
Okay, not too bad.
Yeah, bench press and barbell rows, similar range, 2.5 to 5 kilograms or 5 to 10 pounds. The overhead press is usually 2.5 kilograms or 5 pounds. The deadlift, you can often make bigger jumps, 5 to 10 kilograms or 10 to 20 pounds.
Okay, so like the bigger compound movements allow for bigger jumps?
Yeah, and eventually you'll transition to adding weight to your pull-ups, chin-ups, and dips once you can comfortably do more than 10 reps of the bodyweight versions.
Oh, cool. So like using a weight belt or something?
Exactly. But of course, you can't just keep adding weight forever. Eventually, you're going to hit a plateau. That's where the concept of stalling comes in.
Stalling.
Yeah, so the guide outlines 3 different scenarios that might indicate you're stalling the first. is if you can't complete all 5 sets of 5 reps with good form.
Oh, so like you just can't quite hit all the reps.
In that case, you just try again with the same weight in your next workout. And you can do that for up to 3 workouts in a row.
Okay, so like give yourself a few chances.
Exactly. But if you fail to hit that full 5x5 for 3 workouts in a row, then the program recommends a soft deload.
Soft deload, what's that?
It's basically reducing the weight you're lifting by like 10 to 15%, and then gradually working your way back up.
Oh, okay, so like a little reset to give your body a break.
And the third scenario is if you actually notice the number of reps you're getting is decreasing even within the same set, that usually means you need a bigger break, a hard deload.
Hard deload.
Yeah, and that's the larger reduction in weight. The guide even says if you experience 2 hard deloads on the squat, it's probably time to move on to a more intermediate program.
Okay, so your body's telling you it's ready for more.
Exactly. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about nutrition, because the guide actually gets more specific when it talks about nutrition in the context of StrongLifts 5x5.
Oh, really? Like more tailored advice?
Yeah, so it reiterates that general guideline of aiming for your body weight in pounds multiplied by 18 to get an estimate of your daily calorie needs.
Okay, and then you adjust that based on your goals.
Exactly. You add or subtract around 500 calories, depending on whether you want to gain weight or lose fat.
Makes sense.
And the recommendations for protein, carbs, healthy fats, and water intake, all the same as the general advice we talked about earlier.
Okay, so consistency is key.
Yeah, and what I thought was really helpful is he mentions that there's a whole FAQ section on the StrongLifts website.
Oh, that's awesome. Like if you have specific questions as you go.
Exactly. So if you're like, wait, what do I do if this happens? There's a resource for you.
That's super helpful.
Okay, so now for a lot of people, the real key to success with a program like this isn't just understanding the sets and reps. It's mastering the proper technique for each of these big lifts.
Yeah, form is crucial, especially when you're lifting heavy.
Exactly. And the ebook goes into a lot of detail about the correct form for the squat, overhead press, bench press, deadlift, barbell row, pull-ups, chin-ups, and dips.
Okay, so let's go through each one, starting with the squat, since it's so central to the whole program.
Right. So a proper squat is defined as bending through your knees with the barbell across your upper back until your hip crease goes below the top of your knees. That's what's called below parallel.
Below parallel.
Yeah, and the guide emphasizes the full body benefits of squatting. It works your legs, glutes, core, upper back, everything.
Yeah, it's a compound movement, so it's working a lot of muscles at once.
And it even addresses that concern a lot of people have about deep squats being bad for your knees.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that before.
The ebook actually argues that your knee joint is strongest and most stable at the extremes of its range of motion, both fully bent and fully straight.
So like partial squats might actually be worse.
Exactly. And it stresses that if you do have knee pain during squats, it's more likely due to bad technique or lack of mobility than the depth of the squat itself.
Okay, that's reassuring to know.
Yeah, and safety is a big focus too. Always squat in a power rack with the safety pins set at the right height.
Yeah, that's essential, just in case you can't complete a rep.
And start with a lightweight, even just the empty bar, to really nail that technique.
Makes sense. Start light and focus on form.
Exactly. And the guide goes into a lot of detail about the setup, where the bar should sit, your grip, your chest position, your eye gaze, keeping your upper back, tight elbows back, foot stance, toes out, and making sure your weight is balanced over your heels.
Wow. So a lot to think about.
Yeah, but it's all important for a safe and effective squat. And then it breaks down the movement itself, the descent. You start by pushing your hips back like you're sitting in a chair, knees tracking over your toes or slightly out until you hit parallel.
And then driving back up.
Exactly, driving your hips up, squeezing your glutes, pushing through your heels, and keeping those knees out.
Okay, so like a powerful upward movement.
And the guide also lists common errors to avoid, like rounding your lower back, leaning too far forward, bending your wrists, letting your knees cave in, and letting your heels lift off the floor.
So basically anything that compromises your form.
Exactly. All right, now let's move on to the overhead press.
Okay, what's special about this one?
Well, the guide actually presents it as maybe even more beneficial than the bench press.
Really? Why is that?
Because it works. Your entire body, for stability, builds more functional strength, contributes to healthier shoulders, and is just generally more rewarding to do.
Interesting. I never thought of it that way.
So for the setup, you stand with your feet about shoulder width apart, or you can use a slightly staggered stance. Grip the bar, shoulder width apart, keep your chest up, elbows slightly forward, eyes straight ahead, and squeeze your glutes.
Okay, so like engaging your core for stability.
Exactly. And then the movement itself, you tilt your head back slightly to clear your face as you lift, then shift your torso forward as the bar passes your forehead, and finally push the bar straight up overhead, locking everything out.
So like a smooth, controlled movement.
And again, there are common mistakes to avoid, like not keeping your chest up and elbows forward, starting with the bar too high in your chest, pushing the bar forward, instead of getting your body underneath it and holding your breath incorrectly.
So basically anything that deviates from that smooth, controlled movement.
Exactly. Right. Now let's talk about the bench press, everyone's favorite.
Yeah, but it can be risky if you're not careful.
The guide emphasizes that a lot always use a thumb around grip. Start with a manageable weight and ideally have a spotter, especially as you get heavier.
Yeah, safety first.
And it also addresses shoulder pain, which is a common problem with bench pressing, often caused by bad technique, bad posture, and muscle imbalances.
So like making sure your shoulders are healthy and strong.
Yeah, so for the setup, you want to create a really stable base, squeeze your shoulder blades together, and down, keep your chest up, feet flat on the floor.
Okay, so like a solid foundation.
The grip should be between 22 and 28 inches, and the bar should sit in the heel of your palm closer to your wrist.
Got it.
And then you lower the bar to your chest, right around nipple level, and then press it back up in a straight line.
Okay, so like a controlled descent and a powerful press.
And again, there are common errors to avoid in racking, with bent arms pressing to your face, bending your wrists, elbows flaring out, shoulders rolling forward, glutes coming off the bench, pushing your head into the bench, all that stuff.
So basically anything that compromises your form or puts your shoulders at risk?
Exactly. Okay, let's move on to the deadlift. This one's all about pushing with your legs and hips not pulling with your lower back.
Yeah, that's key. Got to protect that lower back.
The guide highlights how important deadlifts are for everyday life and building a strong back.
Yeah, it's a functional exercise.
So for the setup, you want the bar at mid-shin level, where flat, hard-soled shoes, no lifting straps, at least in the beginning, feet shoulder width apart, bar close to your shins, chest up, eyes, forward grip, shoulder width, or slightly wider, and arms completely straight.
Wow, that's a lot to remember.
Yeah, but it's all crucial for a safe and effective deadlift. Then you take a deep breath, brace your core, and drive up through your heels, keeping the bar close to your body.
So like a powerful hip extension.
Exactly. And when you lower the weight, unlock your hips. First, push them back, and then bend your knees, keeping the bar close.
Okay, so like a controlled descent.
And common errors to avoid include starting with your hips too high or too low rounding, or hyperextending your back, rolling your shoulders, shrugging at the top, pulling with bent arms.
So basically anything that puts stress on your lower back or compromises your form.
Exactly. Okay, now let's talk about the barbell row.
Okay, how is this one different?
This one's all about building upper back strength. And the key is starting each rep with the bar on the floor and using hip extension for momentum.
Okay, so not just pulling with your arms.
Exactly. The setup is similar to the deadlift feet, shoulder width apart, bar under your shoulders, straight, lower back, chest up, eyes down at the floor, knees slightly bent.
Okay, so like a strong starting position.
Yeah. Then you take a breath, extend your hips to lift the bar off the floor, and pull your elbows high towards the ceiling, bringing the bar to your lower chest or upper abdomen.
Okay, so like a powerful pulling movement.
Exactly. And common errors include letting the bar drift too far away, letting your back get too upright, dropping your chest and extending your knees too much as you pull.
So basically anything that compromises your form or puts stress on your lower back.
Exactly. Okay, now let's move on to pull-ups and chin-ups. These are crucial for building upper body strength and muscle mass.
Yeah, they're awesome exercises.
The guide differentiates between pull-ups, palms facing away, and chin-ups, palms facing towards you.
Right, so pull-ups are generally harder, working more back, and chin-ups are easier, focusing more on biceps.
Exactly. And for those who can't do a full rep yet, he suggests starting with chin-ups, using resistance bands for assistance, getting a spot from a partner, or even using a controlled swinging motion called kipping.
Kipping?
Yeah. But he strongly advises against using assisted pull-up machines and lat pull-down machines as your primary method.
Interesting. Why is that?
He argues that the strength you gain from those machines doesn't transfer as well to unassisted pull-ups.
Oh, okay, so like it's not as functional.
Exactly. So for proper technique, you start from a dead hang arm, arms fully extended, then pull yourself up until your chin clears the bar grip. Firmly breathe out as you pull up. Keep your chest up, eyes towards the bar. Pull your elbows down towards the floor, and you can even bend your legs and cross your feet behind you.
There's a lot of little cues to remember.
Yeah, and common errors include not fully straightening your arms, letting your shoulders roll forward using too much hip swing, not pulling yourself high enough, so your chin is above the bar.
Okay, so basically anything that compromises your form or reduces the effectiveness of the exercise.
Exactly. And finally, we have dips.
Dips. Okay, what's the best way to do these?
The guide recommends parallel bar dips as the standard variation.
Okay, are bench dips? Okay.
He actually advises against bench dips because of the potentially unhealthy shoulder positioning.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
So for dips, you start with your arms locked out at the top of the bars, lower yourself down until your shoulders are at least level with or below your elbows, and then push yourself back up, locking your elbows at the top.
Okay, so like a controlled descent and a powerful press.
Exactly. And common errors include not going deep enough, not locking out your elbows, and experiencing pain in your shoulders or torso, which usually means your form is off.
Okay, so just like all the other exercises, got to focus on proper form.
All right, so that covers the main exercises, but there's a whole FAQ chapter in the ebook that addresses a ton of common questions and concerns.
Oh, that's awesome, like a deep dive into the details.
Exactly. It covers things like what kind of physique you can expect to develop, the reasons behind the 5 sets of 5 rep scheme, the safety of weightlifting concerns about the bench press, starting with just the empty barbell squatting 3 times a week, dealing with soreness, rest times, tempo warming up, the difference between pull-ups and chin-ups, strategies for people who can't do a pull-up, yet dealing with missed reps or workouts, maintaining fitness on holiday, returning after a layoff, integrating cardio mixing, running with StrongLifts 5x5 rest days, planned rest weeks, physique concerns like man boobs and women thighs, advice for skinny guys wanting to gain weight, sticking to the program whether you need extra arm work or ab work substitutes for pull-up bar or dip bars, why you shouldn't use the Smith machine, how to set up for the overhead press if your gym doesn't have high uprights, what to do if your gym doesn't allow deadlifts, what to do if you hate the bench press, whether there's a dumbbell-only version integrating power cleans, combining StrongLifts 5x5 with sports training, and whether the program is effective for women.
Wow, that's a lot of ground covered.
Yeah, it's super comprehensive, and it really helps clarify a lot of the nuances of the program.
So basically, if you have a question about StrongLifts 5x5, the FAQ probably has the answer.
Pretty much so. Overall, it's clear that StrongLifts 5x5 is presented as this really well-structured, beginner-friendly program for getting into strength training. The focus is on these fundamental compound exercises done consistently, with an emphasis on good form and progressive overload.
Yeah. And it all starts with building those healthy lifestyle habits.
Exactly. So the key takeaway is that StrongLifts 5x5 is simple but effective. It's all about those big compound movements, the squat, deadlift, bench press, overhead press, barbell row, done consistently with gradual increases in weight.
Yeah, and while it's designed for beginners, it can also be great for anyone returning to lifting or just looking for a strength-focused approach.
Exactly. Now, as you're thinking about this program, does this emphasis on compound movements and frequent practice of those key lifts resonate with you? Does it align with your learning style and your goals?
That's a good question to ask yourself.
And here's a final thought, given that the program is pretty specific about not substituting exercises and the need for certain equipment. How could you apply the principles of progressive overload and a focus on those fundamental movements if you have limited equipment or need to explore different exercise options?
Oh, that's a really interesting challenge. Like, how can you adapt those core principles to different situations?
Exactly. It's about taking the essence of the program and seeing how it can be applied in different contexts.
That's a great way to think about it.
So yeah, hopefully this deep dive into StrongLifts 5x5 has been helpful in giving you some things to think about as you continue on your strength training journey.
Yeah, definitely some good food for thought.
All right. Until next time.
Yep.
Keep diving.
Keep lifting.